My birthday has never really belonged to me. It's always been this strange background event in our family, like a calendar reminder everyone keeps snoozing. Growing up, there were no big parties, no balloons, no cake with sparklers or loud singing. Sometimes there wasn't even cake at all. Just a "we'll do something next weekend" that somehow dissolved into silence. Till every year I held on to this tiny, stubborn hope. Maybe this time they'll remember. Maybe this year will be different. I used to rehearse my reaction in the mirror like some kind of emotional fire drill. If they forgot again, I'd laugh it off. Pretend it didn't matter. Shrug and say, "It's fine, really." 'Cause in our house, disappointment was something you swallowed, not something you talked about. This year, though, felt different. Or at least I wanted it to. I had just moved into my own apartment. Small, quiet, barely furnished, but mine. I worked long hours. I paid my own bills. I cooked meals that sometimes burned and sometimes surprised me. I felt like my life was finally something I was building with my own hands. And secretly I thought, maybe they'll see that. Maybe they'll see me. The morning of my birthday, I woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight slid across the wall like soft paint. I lay there for a second, smiling into the quiet. No big expectations. Just a gentle wish that at least someone would say it. My phone was on the nightstand, face down. I let it sit there for a while. I made coffee, fed my little plant, answered a few emails. Then, finally, I picked it up. No messages. No missed calls. No notifications. Just spam. Sales. A reminder that my phone bill was due next week. I laughed, a short, breathless sound that didn't feel like laughter at all. "Okay," I whispered. "Maybe they're busy." Hours passed. I went to work. My coworkers took me out for cupcakes during lunch. They didn't know my history. They didn't know that something so simple felt like someone had just handed me proof that I existed. We laughed. Took photos. They hugged me. I didn't cry, but I wanted to. On the way home, I finally broke the silence and texted the family group chat. "Hey! Just got home. Long day. A slow, careful test." My mom left the message on read. My dad double-tapped it. Heart reaction. My brother sent a GIF. None of them said the words. I got home, put my keys on the table, took a deep breath. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe they'll realize. Maybe there's a surprise. I heated up leftover pasta and sat on the couch, trying not to spiral. I turned on Netflix. My comfort show filled the silence like a blanket. Halfway through the episode, my phone buzzed. I glanced down, heart jumping, and saw my mom's name. For a second, warmth spread through my chest. "See?" I thought. They didn't forget. They were just late. I opened the message. "Hey honey, Netflix stopped working. Did you change the password? We're trying to watch something." I stared at the screen. Blinked. My birthday. My silence. The entire day. And the first thing they thought to ask was about my streaming account. Not "how was your day?" Not "we're so sorry we forgot." Not even the bare minimum. Just password. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A dozen responses flashed through my brain. Jokes. Sarcasm. Anger. Explanations. Then, like a slow tide, something inside me went still. 'Cause in that moment, I finally understood something I had been avoiding for years. It wasn't that they forgot my birthday. It was that I simply wasn't centered in their world at all, unless I could provide something. A login. A favor. Help. Access. Convenience. And suddenly the silence felt less like an accident, and more like a truth I hadn't wanted to face. I put the phone face down on the couch and just sat there. TV kept playing, laugh track echoing through the room like it belonged to someone else's life. I wasn't angry at first. I wasn't even sad. I felt hollow, like someone had opened a window inside my chest and let all the air out. I picked the phone back up, read the message again, and again. My mind tried to negotiate. Maybe they meant to say something later. Maybe Mom assumed Dad had already called. Maybe it slipped their minds, but in a harmless way. I wanted to believe that so badly. 'Cause the alternative was heavier. The alternative meant that remembering my existence simply ranked below entertainment. I typed slowly, yeah. I changed the password. Then I stopped. My thumb hovered. The old version of me, the one trained to keep the peace at all costs, wanted to send the new password and make this whole feeling disappear. I could almost hear my own inner script. Don't rock the boat. Don't make it weird. Don't be dramatic. But another voice, quieter and steadier, rose from somewhere deeper. Why is the boat always your responsibility not to rock? Why are you the one who always swallows things to keep everyone else comfortable? I erased the message. Started over. Hey, today's my birthday. I stared at those 5 words. They looked small. Embarrassing almost. Like I was begging to be noticed. I deleted it again. My chest tightened. I felt childish. Petty. But I also felt like a child who had waited at the window all day for someone who never came. I took a breath and typed differently. Netflix is fine. But did you realize what day it is? I hit send before I could overthink it. The dots popped up almost instantly. Mom replied, "Oh my gosh, is it today? I swear the week got away from us. Happy birthday. We'll celebrate next time you're over." 3 exclamation points. No call. No apology that sounded like an apology. Just a quick patch job, as if she had spilled something and wiped it with the back of her hand. A few seconds later, Dad wrote, "Happy birthday, kiddo. Proud of you." Short. Distant. Template. My brother sent a cake emoji and a thumbs up like he was reacting to a Facebook post, not acknowledging a human being's heart. And then, after a brief pause, Mom added, "By the way, can you just send the password?" The show froze again. There it was. Priority. Clear. Undeniable. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Not rage, clarity. A mirror held up to our dynamic. I had always been useful. I had always been the bridge, the fixer, the resource. When they needed something handled, they remembered me. When it came to me needing something back, even something as small as a message, I became optional. I stood up and walked into the kitchen just to move my body. The fridge hummed. Clock ticked. Everything in my apartment felt more present than the people who were supposed to know me best. I opened the cupboard and grabbed a glass of water, my hand shaking slightly. This wasn't really about Netflix, or passwords, or even birthdays. It was about an entire pattern crystallizing in one tiny conversation. Every "we'll celebrate later." Every "you understand." Every time I'd been expected to be low maintenance so no one else had to stretch. I walked back to the couch, sat down, and finally typed something honest. "I'm not sending the password right now. I need you to hear me first. It really hurt that nobody remembered today. It feels like I matter only when you need something." I read it twice. My stomach twisted. My heart pounded in my throat. Vulnerability felt like standing barefoot on broken glass, necessary and terrifying. I pressed send. The dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Time stretched. Then Mom responded, "We didn't mean anything by it. You're being sensitive. Don't ruin the mood. Just send the login, please." And that sentence, those 6 words, snapped something inside me I didn't know was still capable of breaking. Don't ruin the mood. The mood, apparently, was more important than my feelings. Their comfort mattered more than my hurt. Keeping the evening smooth for them outweighed acknowledging a wound they had caused. And in that moment, I realized how many times in my life I had accepted that bargain. Not tonight. I placed the phone on the table again, my breath slow and steady. For the first time, I wasn't sure how this was going to end, but I knew it wasn't going to end with me disappearing into silence again. I sat there for a while just staring at that last message. Sensitive. The word echoed through my head like someone tapping the inside of a glass. I'd heard it my whole life. When I cried as a kid because plans changed at the last second. When I got upset that no one came to my school play. When I spoke up about feeling ignored. Sensitive was their shortcut. Their way of saying the problem wasn't their behavior. Problem was my reaction to it. I picked the phone back up. My hands didn't shake this time. I'm not ruining the mood, I typed slowly. I'm telling you the truth. I stopped. Let that sit. Then added, and I'm not just the person who pays for subscriptions. I'm also your daughter. I sent it. No apology. No smiley face. No softening. Just honesty. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the typing bubble appeared again. Disappeared. Appeared. Disappeared. Felt like watching someone debate with themselves. Finally, Mom wrote, "We've had a long day. We're tired. Can we not do this right now?" My jaw tightened. That sentence carried the weight of every conversation we never had. Not right now. Maybe later. Let's keep the peace. Except later never came. I leaned back into the couch, staring at the dark window. My reflection looked older than I felt. Not in years. In where? I thought back to past birthdays. The year I turned 13 and my cake was one of those grocery store ones with "Happy Birthday" written generically because they forgot to tell the bakery my name. The year I turned 18 and they handed me a card with $20 inside and a note that said, "Welcome to adulthood, time to be responsible." The year I turned 25 and they texted, "We'll celebrate when things slow down." Things never slowed down. A tiny laugh escaped my throat, not from humor but disbelief. I realized I had lived my entire life lowering the bar so they wouldn't trip on it. And they still managed to. Not maliciously. Not with hatred. But with neglect disguised as normal. The phone buzzed again. This time it was my brother. Mom's stressed. "Why are you making everything about feelings? Just give the password. We'll call you this weekend." There it was. Not "I'm sorry." Not "we messed up." Just a subtle accusation that caring about myself was somehow an inconvenience. I typed back. Deleted. Typed again. Deleted. Words swirled through my head like birds slamming into glass. Finally I wrote, "You know what? Don't worry about it." He answered with a thumbs up. That was it. Conversation closed. My birthday folded neatly into the category labeled "not urgent." The apartment felt quiet in a way that didn't hurt anymore. Felt informative. I stood up, walked to the kitchen trash can, and threw away the takeout flyer I had planned to use to order something special. I opened the fridge, pulled out leftover pasta, reheated it, and sat at the table. No candles. No fuss. But somehow it felt more honest. Spite came with a new realization. I wasn't angry that they forgot. I was exhausted from always excusing it. I was tired of telling myself that this was fine, that families are busy, that I shouldn't expect too much. I was tired of shrinking my needs down to fit inside their capacity. Clock hit midnight. My birthday slipped quietly into yesterday. The next morning, sunlight slid across the floor like it had no idea anything had happened. I made coffee and scrolled through my phone. A few friends had messaged. A coworker sent a late happy birthday with a confetti emoji. Even my landlord texted because the reminder popped up in his calendar. Strangers remembered better than my own parents had. That thought didn't stab. Clarified. Mom finally called around noon. I watched the phone ring. The old version of me would have answered on the first ring, voice bright, ready to pretend everything was fine so no one had to feel bad. Instead, I let it ring out. She called again, then sent a text. Call us when you're in a better mood. Better mood. I sighed slowly and set the phone face down. It hit me then that I had been waiting for years for something simple. Not gifts, not money, not grand gestures, but presence, effort, memory. And I realized that waiting had kept me stuck. Waiting had made my worth dependent on someone else's to-do list. I poured another cup of coffee and sat at the table. For the first time, I didn't feel like the neglected kid anymore. I felt like an adult who finally saw the pattern clearly. And clarity changes everything. Not instantly, not dramatically, but quietly, like the first crack of light under a door you didn't know could open. That afternoon, I opened my notes app and typed 3 words at the top of a blank page: what I deserve. Then, line by line, I started writing. Respect, consistency, effort, conversations that don't get postponed forever, birthdays that feel like I exist, boundaries that don't make me the villain. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It was a list, a guide, a promise to myself. And as strange as it sounds, that list, not a cake, not a party, not a text, became the first real gift I'd ever given myself. A couple of days passed. Not silence, just surface-level noise. A meme from my brother. A forwarded recipe from my mom. A random how's work from Dad, like nothing unusual had happened. Like my birthday had been a speed bump they rolled over without noticing. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest tightened, then relaxed again when I realized it wasn't the conversation I needed. Not the acknowledgement. Not the "we hurt you and we're sorry." Just the usual chatter, floating above something deeper neither of them wanted to touch. I didn't answer right away. Not out of spite. Out of caution. 'Cause I knew myself. If I jumped back into their rhythm too quickly, I'd disappear into it again. I'd smooth things over. I'd say it's fine. And it wasn't. On the 3rd evening, Mom finally sent something different. Can we talk tonight? No emojis. No else. Just a sentence that carried weight. My stomach tightened. I walked around my apartment for a few minutes, picking up random things, putting them back down, stalling. Then I typed, sure. We got on a call. I could hear the TV in the background and plates clinking like their lives were still happening at full speed. So, she began, stretching the word, what's going on with you lately? You've been distant. The irony almost made me laugh. I took a slow breath. I've been thinking, I said carefully. About my birthday. About patterns. There was a pause. Then a soft sigh. We said happy birthday, she replied quickly. We just mixed up the day. You're making such a big deal out of something small. There it was again. Small. Shrink it down. Move it aside. I felt my throat get tight, but I didn't back down. It's not small, I said. It's every year. It's every we'll celebrate later. It's always me understanding, but nobody else trying. She stayed quiet. I could hear Dad in the background say, tell her we love her, like he was calling instructions from another room. We love you, she repeated. Copy. A relay. I swallowed. I know you say that, I answered. But love without effort doesn't feel like love. It feels like convenience. She shifted into a different tone, softer but edged. We're stressed. We work a lot. You know how busy things are here. You're an adult now. Birthdays are for kids. That sentence landed like a dull weight. So are feelings, I said. Are those for kids too? There was another pause. I imagined her looking at Dad, searching for a line that would end this. Then she used the one that always worked before. We didn't do anything wrong. You chose to be upset. For a second, I almost slipped. I almost apologized. Old reflexes kicked up, whispering that peace was more important than truth. But then I pictured the night my phone buzzed only for a password. I pictured the cupcakes at work, the coworkers who saw me, and something inside me stayed steady. I'm not choosing to be upset, I said. I'm choosing not to ignore it anymore. The silence on the line stretched. I could hear the faint sound of the TV muted, a chair scraping. And then Dad came on. "Hey," he said, voice calm, almost rehearsed. "Life is tough. We didn't get coddled growing up. We handled things. You have food. You have a place. You're fine. Checklist. Needs met. Emotions dismissed." "This isn't about survival," I replied. "It's about relationship. I don't want bare minimum. I want connection. And I don't feel it." He exhaled sharply. "You always focus on what we don't do," he said. "Never what we do." I closed my eyes. "Because what you don't do is the part that hurts." My voice didn't crack. It didn't rise. Stayed level, and that seemed to unsettle them more than tears ever had. "So what do you want?" Mom asked finally, sounding tired. "A parade. A big gift. Money." I almost laughed. "No," I said quietly. "I wanted a phone call. A message that didn't need reminding. I wanted effort that didn't arrive only after I asked for it. I wanted to feel chosen. Just once." There was a long silence. Then she said something soft, almost vulnerable. "We didn't think it mattered that much anymore." My chest tightened, not from hurt this time, but from clarity. "It still matters," I said. "And if it doesn't matter to you, I need to create some space so I stop expecting it." The word space made her flinch. I heard it. "What does that mean?" she asked quickly. "Panic now." "It means," I answered slowly, "I'm going to stop overgiving. Stop jumping every time you need something. Stop pretending things don't hurt. I'm going to practice boundaries." The line went cold for a second. Then Dad muttered, "So this is about Netflix after all." I actually smiled. "No," I said. Netflix was just the flashlight that showed me the room. Nobody spoke. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a door closing on an old version of me, and another door quietly beginning to open. That night, after the call ended, the quiet in my apartment felt different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was deliberate, like I had turned off a loud machine that had been humming in the background my whole life. I locked my phone, placed it face down, and just sat there with myself. No distractions. No guilt. For years, every uncomfortable feeling had been followed by cleanup, jokes, apologies, explanations, smoothing things out. This time, there was nothing to fix. Just truth sitting in the middle of the room like a lamp I had finally switched on. I made tea and took it to the window. The city lights flickered like 1,000 tiny reminders that life existed outside of our family narratives. That my world could be bigger than the role I had been assigned. The guilt tried to sneak in anyway. The voice that said, "You're ungrateful. You're dramatic. You're making problems." I let it talk. Then I answered it. "I'm not creating pain. I'm noticing it. And I'm choosing not to live inside it anymore." That felt new. Almost rebellious. The next morning, the group chat woke up before I did. "Mom, morning. When you're calmer, send the password. We want to finish our show tonight." No hello. No mention of the conversation. No curiosity. Just continuation. Like nothing meaningful had passed between us. The old me would have folded immediately. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed slowly. "I'm taking a break from sharing accounts. I need boundaries right now." My thumb hovered. I added, "And this isn't about punishment. It's about taking care of me. Then I sent it. My heart didn't race. It didn't feel like an argument. It felt like putting a fragile object back in its box and saying, "This is mine." Seconds later, my brother chimed in. "Wow. Overreact much." Then another. "You've changed since you moved out." He meant it as an insult. It landed like a compliment. Dad followed. "Family helps each other. You're making this transactional." I sighed. There it was again. The twist. When they take, it's love. When I say no, it's selfish. Family also listens, I wrote. Family notices. Family shows up. I didn't dress it up. I didn't fight. I just named the thing. No one responded for hours. The silence wasn't peaceful this time. Felt cold. Punitive. Kind where everyone decides to wait you out until you go back to being convenient again. I went about my day anyway. Work. Groceries. A walk around the block. Small normal things that made my life feel like my life again. Every once in a while my phone would light up and I'd brace for impact, but it was never them. That evening, another text arrived. This one shorter. Sharper. "Mom, if you're going to behave like this, maybe we should rethink what we do for you." For a second, the words stung. The threat underneath them was familiar. Conditional love wearing a practical jacket. Do as we prefer or the support disappears. But then I realized something important. I wasn't relying on them anymore. Not for rent. Not for food. Not for rides. The only thing they had left to withdraw was closeness, and they were already withholding that. I set the phone down and whispered, almost surprised, "I'm okay." Later that night, I opened my notes app again. Scrolled to "What I Deserve." I added more lines. Conversations that don't come with strings. Apologies that sound like apologies. Birthdays that don't require reminders. Love that isn't measured in logins and favors. As I wrote, memories surfaced, not just the missed birthdays but dozens of small moments I had brushed aside. Times I was the designated helper, the responsible one, the tech person, the driver, the emotional sponge. Times I was praised only when I was useful. And then I saw it clearly. I hadn't just been forgotten. I had been assigned a role. Reliable. Low maintenance. Available. And roles aren't celebrated. They're expected. A message came in again. This time softer. "Mom, we didn't realize this bothered you so much." I sighed. It wasn't an apology. It was distance disguised as understanding. But still, it was a crack. I answered carefully. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me. But impact matters more than intention. I need you to see that." 3 dots danced, then stopped. Started again. Stopped. Finally, "We'll talk later." I smiled a little. Not because everything was fixed, but because for once we weren't pretending nothing happened. That night, I cooked dinner for myself on purpose, not out of survival. I set a plate. Lit a candle. Played music. Not because it was my birthday. 'Cause it was my life. And somewhere between the forkfuls, a quiet realization settled in. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. They don't shut people out. They teach them where the entrance is. And if someone refuses to use the door, that isn't my failure. It's their choice. I went to bed earlier than usual. Not to escape. To rest. Kind of rest that comes after carrying something heavy for too long and finally setting it down. My phone buzzed one last time before I fell asleep. My brother. "So when's the password coming?" I didn't answer. I turned the screen over, exhaled slowly, and let the room grow dark. For the first time in a long time, the darkness didn't feel lonely. It felt honest. And honesty, I was learning, was a kind of light all its own. The next morning, the air felt heavier than usual, not oppressive, just full of all the things that had finally been spoken out loud. I made coffee and checked my phone, half expecting more guilt, more pressure, more emotional invoices disguised as family conversation. Instead, there was a single new message from Mom. "We're coming over this weekend. We can talk then." No question mark. Not a request. A statement. Old habits resurrected. My chest tightened, not from fear this time, but from awareness. The version of me they were driving toward was the old one. The one who always said yes. Who rearranged her plans. Who made space without being asked, because she had been taught that not making space was rude. I took a slow sip of coffee and typed, "I already have plans this weekend. We can schedule another time." Then I put the phone down and walked away before the reflex to apologize could get its hands on the keyboard. The reply was almost instant. "What plans?" Two words that carried years of assumption that my time was always available. I stared at the screen and smiled quietly. "My plans," I wrote back. And nothing more. No explanation. No justification. For a few seconds, the silence after that text felt like a chasm. Then another message arrived. "We'll see." It wasn't approval. It wasn't understanding. But it was the first time they didn't simply declare and expect compliance. A tiny shift, almost invisible but real. At work, my mind drifted. Not in a spiraling way, in a reflective way. I thought about birthdays, passwords, boundaries. I thought about how often I had equated peace with silence, with swallowing, with letting things slide. And I realized something profound in the middle of checking spreadsheets and answering emails. Peace isn't the absence of tension. Sometimes it's the presence of truth. Even when that truth is uncomfortable. Even when it shakes the furniture. During lunch, I sat outside with my coworker Jen. She asked casually, "So, how was your birthday?" I hesitated, then told her the truth. Not the softened version. The real one. The forgetfulness. Password. Conversation. The boundary. She didn't try to fix it. She didn't belittle it. She just listened. Then she said, "That sounds really lonely." "I'm sorry." The simplicity of that sentence made my throat tighten. No speeches. No explanations. Just acknowledgement. It was wild how healing two honest words could be when you'd spent years living without them. That night, I got home and cooked dinner again. Not because I was celebrating something big, but because feeding myself felt like an act of respect. Halfway through chopping vegetables, my phone rang. "Dad." I froze for a second. Then I wiped my hands, took a breath, and answered. His voice was unusually careful. "Hey." I wanted to talk without all the noise. I leaned against the counter. "Okay." He cleared his throat. "Your mom's upset. I'm trying to understand. You're saying we don't care about you because of one birthday." The framing stung, but I stayed calm. "I'm saying it's not one birthday. It's a pattern. A pattern where I'm expected to adjust while nobody else does." He was quiet. I could hear the TV in the background again, low. "We thought you were fine," he said. "You always seemed fine." I nodded even though he couldn't see. I seemed fine because I didn't feel allowed to be anything else. A beat passed. Then another. "I didn't know," he said finally, voice softer. "I grew up where no one cared about that kind of thing." There it was, not an excuse, but context. "I'm not blaming you," I said. "I'm asking you to learn with me." He sighed, not annoyed, not dismissive. Tired. Human. "We'll try," he said. "But you can't expect us to change overnight." I smiled faintly. "I'm not asking for overnight. I'm asking for effort." We didn't solve everything in that call. There were still rough edges, misunderstandings, old habits clinging to both sides. But for the first time, the conversation didn't feel like me begging. felt like two adults standing in the same room, even if they were still on opposite ends of it. After we hung up, I sat on the couch and stared at the blank TV screen. My Netflix account was still mine. My boundaries were still standing. My voice had not caused the world to collapse. Instead, it had created space, messy, uncomfortable space, but space nonetheless. Minutes later, a text came in from Mom. Not long. Not emotional. Just, happy late birthday. We'll make it right. No exclamation points. No jokes. No conditions. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a grand gesture. But it was real. And sometimes real, even when small, carries more weight than anything loud. I leaned back, exhaled, and realized something quietly liberating. They might change. They might not. They might learn slowly or resist every step. But whether they changed or not, I had. And that meant my story was no longer trapped inside their habits. For the first time, my birthday didn't end with me shrinking to fit the space I was given. It ended with me building a new space, one where I was allowed to take up my own width. And that, somehow, felt like the beginning of every birthday to come. A couple of days passed and things felt strangely calm. Not quiet in the old suffocating way. Different. Like the house finally had windows. Light getting in. I went about my routine, worked, answered emails, cooked simple meals, watered my plants, and noticed how much of my energy had always gone into anticipating their reactions instead of actually living my life. It was almost embarrassing to realize how automatic it had become. Someone would send a message. I would immediately scan it like it was a bomb, dissecting every word for danger. Now I just read. And answered when I was ready. Felt like learning how to breathe again. On Thursday evening, a package showed up at my door. No sender name I recognized. My stomach flipped. I brought it inside slowly, set it on the table, stared at it like it might judge me. Then I grabbed scissors and opened it. Inside, there was a small box wrapped in tissue paper and a folded card. My hands hesitated over the card first. I took a breath and opened it. Belated but sincere. We're trying. That was it. No paragraphs. No defenses. No rewriting of history. Just a simple sentence in my father's handwriting, slightly crooked, like the words were still unsure if they were allowed to exist. I opened the box. Inside was a necklace. Not flashy. Not expensive looking. A tiny, delicate pendant shaped like a compass. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then I laughed softly. Not because it was funny, but because it felt so unintentionally symbolic. Compass. Direction. Choice. Path. Almost ironic, coming from people who had spent years trying to steer my life for me. But maybe, deep down, they understood exactly what they were saying. I held the pendant in my palm. It wasn't about the gift. It wasn't about the price. It was about intention, thought, awareness, effort, quiet message beneath the object. We see you trying to build a life. We don't fully get it yet, but we're trying not to be the storm. I didn't cry. I didn't melt. I didn't magically forget everything. I just felt acknowledged. A small piece of ice inside me cracked, not shattering, just loosening. Later that night, Mom called. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. Her voice was less sharp than usual. Softer. Careful. Did you get the package? No apology yet. No defensive tone. Just a question. Yes, I said. Thank you. Silence stretched between us. I could almost hear both of us standing on opposite cliffs, looking for a bridge. We didn't mean to make you feel like you don't matter, she said eventually. I closed my eyes. Not perfect. Not precise. But closer to honesty than she had come in years. I know, I said. I also need you to hear that sometimes you did. She inhaled like that sentence stung. We'll do better, she said quietly. Not we'll explain. Not you misunderstood. Just we'll do better. We didn't unpack the past that night. We didn't dissect every wound. We didn't magically transform into a healed family. But we took one step. And sometimes a step is as holy as a miracle. Over the next week, something shifted in our communication. Shorter texts, fewer demands, more questions. Not perfect ones. Clumsy, awkward, sometimes phrased wrong, but questions nonetheless. How's work? Do you have plans this weekend? Can we call later? It was strange. Strange in a way that made me both nervous and hopeful. Like watching someone learn how to walk again without grabbing onto you for balance. One afternoon, while eating lunch at my desk, I realized something quietly life-changing. My happiness was no longer waiting on them. For years, I had lived in a rhythm that sounded like this. If they approve, I'm good. If they forget, I'm worthless. If they include me, I belong. If they don't, I disappear. Now, the rhythm sounded different. I exist. Period. They can add to my life. They cannot determine it. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me free. A few nights later, Tasha and I sat on the couch with takeout containers and a terrible reality show playing in the background. I told her about the necklace, the card, the call. She nodded slowly. Progress, she said. Messy progress. But still progress. I smiled. Yeah. I'm not reopening the gates all the way. But I'm not slamming them shut either. She raised her chopsticks like a toast. Boundaries with compassion. Who are you? I laughed. Someone who finally stopped auditioning for a role I never wanted. Before going to bed that night, I stood in front of the mirror and fastened the compass necklace around my neck. Felt light. Simple. Not a burden. Not a chain. Just a reminder. I looked at myself and, for once, didn't evaluate. Didn't criticize. Didn't compare. I just looked. And thought quietly, I'm allowed to take up space here. And that might sound small. But it was everything. 'Cause for the first time in my life, family wasn't the place I lost myself to stay. It was simply a part of my story, not the author of it. And the road ahead, whatever it looked like, finally felt like mine. Change is funny. It rarely happens in straight lines. It shows up in waves. One day everything feels lighter. The next, the old gravity pulls at your ankles again. A week after the necklace arrived, that gravity came back for a visit. Started with a group message. Mom, Dad, my brother, and me. Family dinner Sunday. Everyone here at 6. Not a question. Not an invitation. An announcement. For a moment, the old reflex flickered. My calendar opened by itself, brain already rearranging plans that hadn't even fully existed yet. Then I stopped. Closed the calendar. Looked at the sentence again. Family dinner. Here. 6. That familiar knot tightened in my stomach, not because I didn't want to see them. I did. But because of the subtext. We decide. You adjust. That script I'd been memorizing since childhood. I typed slowly. Deleted. Typed again. I'd like to come. But can we plan instead of being told? Sundays are not always open for me. I stared at the text like it was a cliff. Then I pressed send. Silence. 10 minutes. 20. An hour. The group thread pinged finally. My brother, here we go again. Dad, it's just dinner. Don't overthink. Mom added, you always have something. The frustration rose like heat under my skin. Not explosive. Just steady. I rested my phone on the table and let the feelings move through instead of defending myself in paragraph form like I used to. When I finally replied, it was simple. Respecting my time isn't something. Let me know when you want to plan together. Conversation stopped there. Not resolved. Just paused. And that pause used to terrify me. This time it felt like a line drawn in sand. Not to trap them. To anchor me. Sunday rolled around anyway. 5:30 my phone rang. Mom. I answered, heart steady. We're eating, she said, voice clipped. You didn't come. I looked out my window, watching the sky shift colors. We didn't plan, I answered softly. You announced. I asked for something different. A long exhale filled the speaker. You're making this hard. I swallowed. No. I'm making this honest. She didn't respond. Call ended quickly after that. That night, guilt came back like an old friend who didn't know it had worn out its welcome. Sat at the edge of my bed and whispered all the usual lines. You're selfish. You're cold. You're breaking the family. I let the thoughts exist. Then I held them up to the light like fragile glass and asked one question I had never allowed myself before. If I were a friend telling this story, would I call her selfish? The answer came so quickly it almost startled me. No. I'd tell her she was learning to be treated like a human being instead of a resource. The next day, Dad texted. We should schedule dinner next week. What works for you? I stared at the sentence twice just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. There it was, the door. Not wide open, but cracked. Wednesday or Thursday, I wrote back. 7. He replied, Thursday then. 7. No sarcasm. No commentary. Just logistics. I didn't realize how hungry I was for something that simple until it finally arrived. Thursday came. I drove over, the compass necklace cool against my skin like a whisper. On the way, I rehearsed nothing. I didn't plan conversations. I didn't draft speeches in my head. All I promised myself was this: I would tell the truth when asked, and I would not perform. When I walked into the house, the smell of garlic and roasted vegetables drifted through the hallway. Comforting. Familiar. Mom hugged me, quick and awkward, then stepped back. Her eyes looked tired, softer though, like she had been thinking instead of plotting. Hi, she said. Hi, I answered. We stood there for a second, both of us unsure what came next without the old script. Dinner was normal. Not perfect. Not dramatic. Just normal. My brother cracked jokes. Dad asked about work. Mom asked about my apartment and whether the water heater had finally been fixed. No emotional traps. No sudden shifts into guilt territory. Just conversation with small bumps of silence where, in the past, manipulation would have slid in. Felt like everyone was walking a bit more carefully. Not out of fear, out of awareness. Halfway through the meal, Mom put her fork down. I've been thinking, she said, which historically had been the prelude to something that required my immediate sacrifice. I braced gently but stayed open. Birthdays meant something different in my house growing up, she said slowly. We didn't make big deals. We didn't notice like maybe we should have. I think I carried that into this family without asking if it hurt you. Her hands trembled just slightly on the table. My throat tightened. And not from pain. From the shock of hearing accountability wearing its real name. It did hurt, I said softly. But thank you for seeing it now. She nodded, eyes shiny. I don't always know how to fix things, she admitted. But I don't want to lose you. Those words landed gently, like a blanket laid across a bruise. Not heavy. Just real. You're not losing me, I said. You're just meeting me. Maybe for the first time. After dinner, as I was leaving, Dad walked me to the car. He scratched the back of his neck the way he does when he's trying to be vulnerable without making it obvious. About the Netflix thing, he said, half smiling. We got our own account. I laughed, a real laugh. Good, I said. He nodded. Didn't realize how much we leaned on you for everything. We'll figure out our stuff. That sentence, our stuff, was stronger than any apology he could have crafted. Meant he understood something essential. My existence was not a toolbox. It was a life. Driving home, streetlights flickering across the windshield, the realization settled deeper in my chest. Healing didn't look like turning my parents into different people overnight. Didn't look like dramatic speeches or sudden perfection. It looked like tiny shifts, slight pauses, new questions, fewer demands. It looked like me choosing myself without burning the whole house down. And sure, I knew setbacks would probably come. Old patterns have strong muscles. But now I had something I'd never had before, a center. A place inside that said, quietly but firmly, I matter here too. I pulled into my parking spot, turned off the engine, and sat in the silence. Not the old silence that used to feel like punishment. This one felt earned. Spacious. Honest. I touched the tiny compass resting at my collarbone and smiled. Not because everything was fixed. 'Cause for the first time I wasn't lost. Peace lasted about 2 weeks. Long enough for me to start believing maybe, just maybe, the ground had settled. And then life did what life always does. It offered a test. It started with a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was tight, a little higher than usual. Call me when you can. It's important. Those words used to send adrenaline straight through my chest. This time I sat down, took a breath, and called back calmly. She answered immediately. There you are. No hello. No how are you. Just urgency. Your dad's car broke down, she said. Mechanic says the engine's done. It'll cost a fortune. We don't have that kind of money right now. I waited. 'Cause I knew there was more. There always was. We were thinking, she continued carefully now, like stepping on thin ice, maybe you could help with a loan. Just until taxes come in. You're good with money. Responsible. You always help. There it was. The old script, dressed in newer words. Not a demand. Not a guilt trip. Just a familiar expectation wearing softer clothes. A few months ago, I wouldn't have even paused. I would have opened my bank app before she finished the sentence. I would have rearranged my budget, my plans, my breath. I would have told myself it was love. Now, the silence on my end stretched on purpose. I let her question sit between us instead of racing to rescue it. How much are we talking? I asked, voice steady. She hesitated. 3,000. She rushed the rest. Only for a couple of months. We'll pay you back. You know we're good for it. A flash of memories rose like sparks. My scholarship check used for bills. Borrowed money that was forgotten. Promises that dissolved into things are tight. Not malicious. Not evil. Just careless, with my sacrifices, with my effort, with me. I took another breath. I can't do that, I said gently. Silence. Then can't or won't. Her tone sharpened, just slightly, like the edge of an old knife finding daylight again. I can't, I repeated, choosing each word like a step on a bridge that might not hold. I'm building my own stability. I'm finally okay. If I start giving chunks of it away, I'll go backwards. And I don't want to live backwards anymore. For a moment, there was only static. Then the shift came. I heard it like weather changing. We raised you, she said softly, dangerously. We did everything for you. And now when we need help, you're suddenly unavailable. The guilt tried to surge. It reached for my throat. But I stayed grounded. You did a lot for me, I said. And I'm grateful. Truly. But raising your child isn't alone. It's parenting. And when you've needed emotional support, rides, help with tech, errands, listening, I've shown up. I'm still showing up. Just not with money I don't have to spare. Her breath hitched. Not rage. Hurt. So that's your final answer. It is, I said softly. I love you. But it's no. On the other end, I could feel the old, familiar machinery starting up. The sighs, the martyr tone, the long pauses meant to pull me back. Except this time, instead of stepping in to soothe it, I let it exist. Okay, she said finally, clipped and small. We'll figure it out. We hung up. I sat on the couch and stared at my hands. They were trembling. Not because I felt cruel. Not because I doubted myself. Because choosing myself still felt like jumping off something tall, even when it was the right ledge. That evening, Dad texted. One line. Heard about the car. Tough call. Proud of you for setting limits. I blinked at the screen. Read it again. And again. Didn't erase Mom's disappointment. It didn't fix everything. But it balanced the scales enough that I didn't collapse under the weight of old patterns. Days passed. They didn't call much. The air between us cooled, not freezing, just chilly. And yeah, it hurt. Boundaries don't numb things. They make the hurt honest instead of hidden. A week later, another message arrived. From Mom this time. Mechanic found us a used engine. Cheaper. Your dad's friend helped. We managed. No passive-aggressive notes. No dagger sentences. Just information. Then another text. Thanks for listening the other day. I was scared. I took it out on you. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. That right there was growth. Slow. Imperfect. But real. I typed back. I'm glad it worked out. I'm always here to talk. Just not to fix everything. A long pause. Then, I know. That night I went for a walk. Cool air. Streetlights humming. Shoes scuffing softly against the sidewalk. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this thought floated up so clearly I almost stopped walking. Being needed is not the same thing as being loved. I had spent so many years confusing the two, thinking that if they relied on me, if they called me for every tiny disaster, if I was the family's Swiss Army knife, then I mattered. But standing there under the streetlight, I realized something gently revolutionary. I wanted a family where I wasn't a tool. I wanted love that didn't require exhaustion to prove itself. I wanted to belong without being depleted. And for the first time, I believed that was possible. Not guaranteed. Not perfect. Just possible. I turned around, headed home, and felt something strong settle in my bones. Not anger, not bitterness, not triumph. Just steadiness. Kind that says, I don't have to disappear to be loved. And if disappearing is the price, then maybe that love isn't really love at all. The calm after the car situation lasted longer than I expected. Weeks went by without any big storms. Conversations were simple. Check-ins were shorter. Boundaries stayed where I put them. And just when I started to feel steady again, life, like always, decided to press on the bruise. It happened on a Saturday afternoon. I was cleaning the kitchen, music playing softly in the background, when my phone buzzed with a photo notification from the family group chat. I wiped my hands, glanced down, and froze. There they were. My parents. My brother. My aunt. My cousins. All smiling around a big, decorated table at a restaurant. Balloons. Cake. Confetti. Sparkling drinks. A banner in the background read, "Congrats, Ethan!" My heart did that strange drop and tighten thing at the same time. I scrolled. More photos. Toasts. Gifts. A slideshow. A caption from Mom under one of the pictures. So proud of our boy. Couldn't let this moment pass without celebrating properly. Celebrating what? I didn't know yet. But I knew what I didn't see. Me. No text. No invite. No, hey, we're thinking of doing something, want come? Nothing. A second later, another message popped up. From Ethan. Promotion party. Finally, senior manager. Fireworks emoji. Champagne emoji. I swallowed hard. Not jealousy. Not exactly. More like that old familiar sting of invisibility brushing up my spine. Then Mom wrote, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. We didn't want to bother you. You're always busy. There it was, wrapped in politeness. A decision made on my behalf. A story written for me without asking if it was true. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. My hand shook, not with rage but with grief. Quiet kind. Kind that whispers, I thought we were past this. Finally, I wrote, I would have liked to be asked. The chat went still. Then Dad replied with his usual fixer tone. It was last minute. Restaurant only had a few seats. No big deal. We'll celebrate with you another time. No big deal. 3 words that carried the weight of 1,000 forgotten things. I stared at the screen and felt something shift, not explosive, not dramatic. Just final. Like a door closing softly after being left open too long. I put the phone down, walked into the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror. And I did something I never used to do when my family hurt me. I didn't immediately make excuses for them. I didn't say they didn't mean it, or it's fine, or you're too sensitive. I simply said out loud, that hurt, and hearing the truth in my own voice steadied me. Later that night, Mom called. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was light, casual. Did you see the pictures? Fun, right? Yeah, I said. Looked nice. A beat. Then you're quiet. 'Cause I was done pretending. I'm disappointed, I said. Calm. Clear. No accusations. Just truth. I wanted to be there. I would have made time. I wish you'd given me the choice. She sighed. We didn't want to complicate things. You always have opinions, plans, boundaries. She said the last word like it was an inconvenience rather than a form of self-respect. I closed my eyes. Boundaries don't exclude me, I said. Decisions made without me do. Silence. Then the familiar defensiveness rose on her end. We can't win with you lately. No matter what we do, you're upset. I almost slipped back into explaining, into begging to be understood. Then I remembered something my therapist once said in a video I'd watched late one night. You are not obligated to make your pain palatable. I'm not asking you to win, I said softly. I'm asking you to include me. That's it. She huffed. Well, it already happened. Let's not dwell. There it was again, forward, forward, forward. Never pause. Never repair. Just bury. I don't want fight, I said. But I can't pretend I'm fine. I'm going to take some space for a bit. We can talk later. Her voice hardened. If you want to distance yourself, that's on you. And for once, that didn't feel like a threat. Felt like a choice. Okay, I said gently. Then it's on me. We hung up. The quiet afterward didn't suffocate me anymore. It wrapped around me like a blanket, unfamiliar but safe. I sat on the edge of my bed, stared at the wall, and let the sadness move through without trying to fix it. Because sometimes the most honest part of healing is realizing that progress isn't a straight line, and that even people who are trying can still hurt you. Later, as I scrolled through the photos one more time, the smiles, the candles, the clinking glasses, I noticed something new. I didn't feel small. I felt separate. Not exiled. Not abandoned. Just no longer standing in the middle of a storm begging to be seen. I was outside of it now. Watching. Choosing what came next instead of waiting to be chosen. And that realization, quiet, steady, unremarkable, felt like its own kind of celebration. One no one could take away. Space is a strange thing. First it feels like punishment. Then, slowly, it starts to feel like oxygen. The days after the promotion party incident stretched quietly. No calls. No questions. No good morning. No how was your day. Just silence. Not cold. Not burning. Just there. Old me would have broken first. Sent a meme. A joke. A long text smoothing everything over. Apologizing for having feelings. Apologizing for existing in a way that wasn't convenient. New me didn't rush. I let the quiet stand like a wall nobody was quite sure how to climb. A week passed. Then another. One evening, I came home from work, dropped my keys into the little wooden bowl by the door, and noticed an envelope on the floor, slid under the door. My name written in my mother's handwriting. Careful. Curved. Almost delicate. My stomach tightened. I took it to the kitchen table. Saturday. Breathed. Opened it. Inside there were 2 pages. Lined paper. Blue ink. Not forwarded from Facebook. Not some copied quote. Her words. Dear, then my name. She started by talking about her childhood. About growing up in a house where emotions were treated like spilled milk, something you cleaned quickly before it stained anything. About birthdays that were just another day. About parents who believed children were investments, not people. Silent nods. Silent dinners. Silent disappointments. Then she wrote this. I learned to survive by shrinking. And somewhere along the way, I taught you to do the same. I don't know how to be the mother you deserved, but I'm trying to understand the one I was. I had to stop reading for a moment. The room blurred. I pressed the paper against my chest like it could steady my heartbeat. She went on. Apologies, not dramatic. Not theatrical. Simple. Specific. Naming things instead of hiding them. I minimized your pain. I compared you to your brother. I used you when it was convenient. I called independence strength, even when it was loneliness. I celebrated loud things and I ignored quiet ones. You didn't imagine it. You didn't exaggerate. You didn't make it up. I covered my mouth. Tears slid down my wrists, warm, surprising, steady. Then the line that undid me. I'm scared you will leave. And I know that fear comes from choices I made. She didn't ask for instant forgiveness. She didn't demand closeness. She didn't twist the knife with, after everything we did for you. She just told the truth. By the time I reached the last paragraph, my entire chest felt like it had been opened and cleaned of dust. I don't expect you to trust me right away. Or to forget. Or to pretend. I only ask for the chance to show slowly that I can learn. Even if it takes the rest of my life. I love you. More clumsily than I wish. But honestly, I stayed there a long time, paper trembling in my hands, feeling something unfamiliar rising. Not relief. Not victory. Compassion. For both of us. I picked up my phone. Typed. Deleted. Typed again. Finally sent. Thank you for writing this. I'm crying. I'm here. One step at a time. Minutes crawled. Then my screen lit up. I don't want to talk yet, she texted. I just wanted you to know I hear you now. That alone felt like an earthquake. Later that night, I sat on the floor with a cup of tea, the necklace cold at my collarbone, and realized something important. Boundaries had never been about creating distance. They'd been about creating room. Room for honesty, for accountability, for new movement, for something healthier to even have a chance. Before, our relationship was a tight rope wrapped around my throat. Now, slowly, it was turning into a bridge. Unsteady. Imperfect. But crossable on both sides. The next day, Dad called. His voice was quieter. Slower. Your mom showed me the letter, he said. I cried. The shop. In front of 2 customers. It was awkward. He laughed softly. Then he cleared his throat. I want to say my piece too. Without pretending I'm innocent. Because I haven't been. I listened. I liked the idea of the strong daughter, he said. It made my life easier. Let me look good. It meant I didn't have to face how tired you were. I joked. I minimized. I brushed things away. And I don't get to pretend it was harmless. The words hit gently, like rainfall after months of drought. I'm proud of you, he continued. Not because you help. Not because you carry things. But because you stopped carrying what wasn't yours. That's something I never learned. We talked for a while. Not as parent and child fighting for dominance, but as 2 flawed humans trying to understand where they hurt each other and why. When the call ended, I sat back and felt a strange calm settle in my bones. Not the fragile kind. The kind that comes from seeing the whole picture instead of living in one painful corner. That night, I opened a blank document and started writing. Not to make content, not to perform, not to vent, but to remember. To trace how far I had come from the version of myself who thought invisibility was the price of love. As I typed, one truth became clearer than anything else. I wasn't the problem. And they weren't monsters. We were just a family made of old stories that had gone unchallenged for too long. And finally, we were telling new ones. I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and went to bed with a heart that felt, for the first time, both heavy with history and light with possibility. Tomorrow, I knew, wouldn't be perfect. But it wouldn't be the same. And that somehow was enough. Time didn't fix everything. It never does. But it changed the way the light hit the cracks. Months passed. Quiet ones. Honest ones. Less explosive. More deliberate. Conversations slowed down. Came fewer. Came better. And no more forced check-ins. No more dramatic lectures. Just steady exchanges where we actually listened instead of waiting to defend ourselves. One Sunday afternoon, they invited me over, planned, not announced. 3 o'clock okay, Mom texted. You don't have to stay long. I smiled at the phrase. You don't have to. Those words would have never existed before. They used to mean, clear your schedule. Drop everything. This matters more than you. Now they meant you have a life. And we see it. I showed up with a pie from the bakery down the street. Not as a peace offering. Just as a guest. The house felt smaller than I remembered and somehow warmer. Less tense. Less curated. Fewer expectations floating in the air. We ate. We talked. Nothing profound. Weather. Work. The neighbor's new dog. The kind of ordinary that used to feel impossible for us. After dessert, Mom disappeared for a minute and returned with a shoebox. Old. Faded. Rubber band around it. I found something, she said softly. We sat at the table, the box between us like a fragile animal. She took off the band. Opened the lid. Inside, photos. Letters. Report cards. Ticket stubs. Fragments of a life. Mine. This is everything I never knew how to say, she whispered. So I saved it instead. She slid a picture toward me. I was 5, missing a front tooth, proudly holding a crayon drawing. Her handwriting on the back. She never gives up. I blinked. Another photo. Middle school science fair ribbon. Another high school play. Me in a ridiculous costume. Another, my college acceptance printout. On each one there were small notes. Pride. Worry. Hope. None of which she'd actually spoken. I thought keeping proof was enough, she said. But I never gave it back to you. I kept it like it belonged to me. I traced the edges of the photos with my thumb, feeling time shift under my skin. Thank you, I said. For showing me now. She nodded, eyes shiny. I can't rewrite the past, she added. But I don't want my silence to be your memory of me. We packed the pictures neatly. Not as monuments, as reminders. Evidence that love had existed, clumsy, uneven, but real, even when it hurt. Later, Dad asked if I could help him in the garage. Old habit made me tense. The garage had always been the place where long lectures hid behind, "Hand me that wrench." But this time he pointed at 2 boxes labeled with my name. "These are yours," he said simply. Not favors. Not leverage. Not obligations. Just yours. Take what you want. Leave what you don't. No guilt contracts included. I laughed. That's new. He smiled. I'm learning. We sorted through them. Trophies. Postcards. The broken lamp I swore I'd fix. The normal clutter of a life transition. The bottom of one box, I found a folded envelope yellowed with time. Inside, a birthday card I never received. My name written carefully. Money tucked between the pages. 10 crumpled bills. What's this? I asked. He exhaled, embarrassed. Your grandmother sent it. Years ago. I forgot to give it to you. Then it felt too late. Then I told myself it didn't matter. That's kind of the story of a lot of things, isn't it? I held the card for a long moment. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just aware. Thank you for not pretending this time, I said. He nodded. I'm done pretending, he answered quietly. It costs too much. Driving home later, dusk painted the sky soft violet. The necklace rested at my collarbone, cool, familiar. The road stretched ahead. Wide. Uncertain. Mine. For the first time, the past didn't chase me in the rearview mirror. It rode beside me, acknowledged, seen, but no longer steering. That night, I sat on the couch with the box of photos and my laptop. I started drafting the story, not to expose anyone, not to shame, but to map the terrain for the version of me who once believed invisibility was safety. I wrote about birthdays forgotten, boundaries mocked, Netflix passwords valued more than my presence. I wrote about anger, disappointment, grief, but I also wrote about letters, conversations, apologies that came late but came honestly. I wrote about the slow miracle of people deciding to grow, not for praise, not for optics, but because they finally realized what their choices had cost. I ended the document with one sentence that felt like it lived inside my bones. Family is not the people who never hurt you, it's the people who learn how not to hurt you the same way again. When I finished, I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and stood at the window. City lights blinked like small promises in the distance. I placed a hand over my chest, felt the steady rhythm. Not racing, not collapsing, just here. And for once, I didn't feel like I was begging to belong. I wasn't proving anything. I wasn't shrinking to fit a script written before I was born. I was present, seen first by myself and then slowly, imperfectly by the people who had once looked right through me. If revenge ever existed anywhere in this story, it wasn't in punishment. It wasn't in speeches that burned bridges or exits that left ashes behind. My revenge, if we even call it that, was learning to stay when it was healthy, leave when it wasn't, and tell the truth even when my voice shook. They forgot my birthday. They remembered my Netflix. They learned eventually to remember me. And I learned finally to remember myself. That was the real ending. And also, beautifully, the true beginning.